So you're in a conversation with someone and they're going on and on about their weekend, their job, their problems, and you're standing there like nodding, waiting for them to ask you something, anything about your life, but that question never comes. The conversation ends and you realize you didn't say a single thing about yourself. Here's what changed everything for me. I started thinking of conversations like a chess clock. You know, those timers chess players use? Each player has their own time that counts down when it's their turn. In conversations, there's an invisible chess clock running. And if you pay attention, you'll notice when the time is completely lopsided. The problem is, many of us were taught that interrupting is rude, that we should wait for our turn, that good listeners wait until they're asked a question. And that works great if you're talking to someone who asks questions. But in the real world, you will meet plenty of people who just don't think to ask. They're not trying to be selfish. Some of them are, but not all of them. And they might actually be just stressed or trying to fit the silence because they don't know how to get you to talk. So here's what to do. As soon as they pause for breath, even for a second, you jump in, you start talking. I know this feels wrong if you spent your whole life being polite and waiting your turn. It took me years to get comfortable with this. I kept thinking that they would get annoyed or offended, but you know what actually happened? They seemed relieved, like they didn't have to carry the whole conversation anymore. But here's the thing. You can't just jump in with a one-word answer or a quick comment. You need to elaborate. You need to let yourself associate and expand on whatever you're saying. Most of us have trained ourselves to be concise. We answer questions briefly and then hand the conversation back. But when you're dealing with someone who dominates conversations, you need to rewire that habit. Here's an exercise you can do right now. Think of a random topic. Let's say coffee. Now, I want you to talk out loud about coffee for 30 seconds straight. Don't plan what you're going to say. Just let your mind associate. Maybe you start with how you make your coffee, and then you remember that coffee shop that you discovered last week, and then how your grandma used to make Turkish coffee, and then the time you tried to quit coffee. Just let yourself ramble. And this exercise trains your brain to elaborate naturally. The point is not that you are supposed to ramble in conversations. The point is to train your brain to elaborate. Because when you're in a conversation with someone who talks a lot, you need to be ready to match that energy if you want to get out of the listener's trap. So you jump in when they pause or when they just catch their breath, and then you run with it until that invisible chess clock feels more balanced. Now, I'm not saying that you should steamroll people or become one of those conversation dominators yourself. The goal is balance. You're just evening out the speaking time. And here's how you know if you're dealing with someone who genuinely wants to hear from you versus someone who's just self-absorbed. When you start talking, do they listen? Or do they immediately try to talk over you or bring the conversation back to them? If they listen, even if they seem to dominate before, then they were probably just filling space, waiting for you to contribute. But if they constantly interrupt you or seem annoyed that you're speaking, that's when you politely excuse yourself. You don't owe anyone a one-sided conversation. The key is to experiment with this. The next time you're stuck in listener's mode, check that internal chess clock. Has the other person been talking for 5 minutes straight or just 2 minutes straight? 10 minutes? When they pause, even briefly, just jump in with something. Not just, oh, interesting, but a real contribution. Share a related story. Give your perspective. Ask a question that shifts the focus. Remember, conversation is supposed to be a two-way street. If you're always the listener, you're not having a conversation. You're providing free therapy. So start noticing that conversational chess clock and give yourself permission to speak up, because your stories, your thoughts, your experiences, they matter just as much as that person's. If you're serious about improving your people skills and are tired of generic advice like just be yourself that sounds good but makes things more confusing, join our training on the link below where I go much deeper into what I talked about here.